Indonesia was a nation holding its breath. The air in cities like Jakarta and Surabaya felt thick with tension long before the streets filled with people. For months, a quiet anger had been growing in homes and markets and on social media. People felt squeezed from all sides. The price of basic needs like rice and cooking oil kept climbing higher and higher. Families found their budgets stretched thin, forcing them to make difficult choices every single day. This was not a sudden problem but a slow, grinding pressure that wore down the patience of ordinary citizens, making them feel left behind by the very system that was supposed to support them. This widespread feeling of economic hardship created a shared sense of frustration. It was a story told in every corner of the country, from the busy streets of the capital to the quiet villages in the outer islands. People saw their hard work giving them less and less, while the promises of a better future seemed to grow more distant. The daily struggle to make ends meet became a common bond, uniting people from different backgrounds in their unhappiness. This was the fertile ground where the seeds of protest were planted. The protests that broke out across Indonesia were caused by deep and long-standing complaints. At the heart of the public's anger was the rising cost of living. Families watched as the price of food, gas, electricity went way up. For many, a full day's work no longer meant a stable life. This money problem was a constant source of worry. People felt they were working harder than ever yet, falling further behind. This struggle was not just an idea, it was a daily reality felt at every kitchen table and market across the country. Adding to this money trouble was how the public saw the rich and powerful in politics. While ordinary people were spending less, news often showed the big salaries and fancy lives of government officials. This created a clear and painful difference. People saw their leaders living in a world of special treatment, seemingly not connected to the daily struggles of the people they were supposed to help. The feeling of unfairness was clear. It felt like there were two different Indonesias, one for the powerful and rich, and another for everyone else. This growing gap between the leaders and the people made trust in the government disappear. The protests had started over money problems. They took a sudden and strong turn with the death of Afan Kurniawan. Afan was a 23-year-old delivery driver, a common sight in the city. He worked long hours to support his family. He was on his way home when he got caught in a fight between protesters and police. Eyewitnesses said he wasn't involved. He was just trying to get through the chaos. He was hit by a tear gas can. His death was shared on social media. Pictures spread quickly. Videos spread quickly. They showed his last moments. Afan's story touched millions. He wasn't a political activist. He was an ordinary working-class man. His job made him relatable to gig workers. His death turned abstract anger into a human story. People saw their sons, people saw their brothers, people saw themselves. His fate showed the unfairness of a citizen killed going about his life. What began as local protests in the capital city of Jakarta soon turned into a movement across the whole country. The story of Afan Kurniawan, amplified by social media and word of mouth, spread quickly across Indonesia's huge islands. Before long, the streets of Surabaya were filled with protesters. Bandung filled with protesters. Makassar filled with protesters. The movement had taken root in different communities. This spread showed how deep and wide public unhappiness was. Protests in different areas took on their own local feel. In university towns, students organized talks and held peaceful marches. In factory areas, worker groups joined the protests, adding calls for better pay and working conditions. In distant provinces, communities raised long-standing land rights issues and pointed out environmental harm. Using technology was very important to organizing this unrest. Encrypted messaging apps and social media became the movement's digital nervous system. People used these tools to share information about meeting spots, to warn each other about police movements, and to show live videos from the streets. Faced with a quickly growing national problem, the government's response was a mix of trying to make peace and using strong force. At first, officials tried to calm the public with comforting words. The president appeared on national television, apologized to Afan Kurniawan's family, and promised a full, clear investigation. Ministers announced plans for social help packages to ease rising living costs. These moves aimed to address protesters' immediate worries and show the government was listening. The goal was to calm things down and convince people to leave the streets. But the promises were met with deep doubt. Many said it was the same old talk from past crises with little follow-through. Cash aid was seen as a temporary fix, a way to buy time without tackling unfairness and corruption. The public wanted more than words. They wanted real action and change. the soft approach failed to quell deeper anger and distrust. The government's actions created a complex and mixed reaction among the Indonesian public. There was a part of the population that felt a sense of relief at the government's promises. For those who were tired of the chaos and trouble, the president's promises, a full investigation and new social help programs, were good news. They hoped these steps would calm the streets and allow life to return to normal. This group, often older and more traditional, cared most about stability and order and were willing to trust the government, hoping for a peaceful solution. However, a much larger and louder part of the public remained deeply angry and unhappy. For them, the government's response was too little, too late. They saw apologies as a public relations move, not true sorrow. Promises of change were met with suspicion after past unmet pledges. This angry group was mostly students, activists, and the poor in cities. They believed corruption and lack of accountability were being ignored. They demanded a complete overhaul and real responsibility for officials, not small concessions. Calls for bigger change grew louder and more specific. Protests shifted from cost of living to systemic reform. In the end, the huge uprising that swept across Indonesia was about much more than the sad death of one young man. Afan Kurniawan's death was the spark, the emotional trigger that brought people onto the streets. But the fuel for the fire had been building up for years. The protests were a strong way to show shared frustration. They were a vote on the country's direction and a loud rejection of an unfair situation. This was not just a moment of anger, it was a moment of national reckoning. The core of the problem was inequality. For too long, the benefits of Indonesia's economic growth had been held by a small group of rich and powerful people. While most of the population struggled with low wages and rising costs, people felt that the system was rigged, designed to protect the interests of the powerful and well-connected. The protests were a demand for a fairer sharing of wealth and chances. They were a call for a society where a person's future is decided by their hard work and talent, not by their connections or their family name. Forget to like and subscribe to follow the next articles of the History and Technology channel. Please share the channel with those who need to know about it. Thank you.